Yeah.
How'd you hit start?
Am I under the wrong one?
Hi,
everyone.
I guess we could both start it.
I'm signed in as the wrong one, aren't I?
You might be. We might be both signed in as you.
Hi. Hi, everyone.
That's okay.
Bear with us 1 second. I had to relocate us because internet is down at our place until tomorrow morning. So currently I'm back at my parents' house. I don't know if you guys remember, or from those that were here a year ago, this is the same room that I was in, and we are going to do it here today, and I'm with Joe. All right. So really quick, as people are coming in, as always, if you want to say where you're watching from, and we'll do a quick shout outs. I also want to make a few announcements that we will be in Minnesota this weekend for Anna Minneapolis in Minnesota. And if you want to check out the convention and stop by and say hi, that's where we will be. And Joe has a tutorial coming out soon that he will hopefully be finishing up sooner than later. Yeah. And we're currently working on exercise 40 results. So if you don't know what that is, you should check it out on the site. And the biggest announcement is that the workshops will be opening today right after the stream. So if you want more of like a one-on-one mentorship, we are starting it in July, and it will run for 5 weeks, and it will start the pre-registration right after the stream. All right, but today we're going to be doing the rows, and we're going to be more or less talking about coloring over your line art. And this is something that I feel a lot of digital artists get stuck on because they are either really good at creating line art, or they are too soft, or they're too scared to add colors on top of their line art. So hopefully this will be kind of an overview on doing that. And we will kind of give you any tips or techniques we have along the way. Are you ready to officially start this?
Yeah.
All right. So official start. Hi, everyone. Welcome to CG Cookies live stream. We do these every Wednesday at 2 p.m. That's Central Time, and then it's -5 GMT outside of the States. And the topic is usually posted an hour or two beforehand, but usually I like to see what people want requested. So I know you guys have been wanting to see a traditional live stream. I was going to do it this week, but since I had to move to my parents and it was kind of a hassle, we might say that for next week. So if you want to see a traditional live stream, that'll probably happen next week. And if you have any questions, even if they don't pertain to what I'm working on specifically, feel free to ask, and we will do our best to answer them. Okay.
We're already getting tons of hellos.
All right, so you can start the shout outs, and I'm going to finish the marketing here.
All right, we have Erica Hoffman says hi from the Sweden, Canada. Oh, geez. Oh, I'm on camera. Okay, we have hi from Belgium from this jumps. Now we're not muted. Okay. Hi from Washington. Hi from Seattle. Hi from Atlanta, Georgia. Can't believe I finally made a live broadcast.
Thank you.
And Benedict is back from Austria.
Always a pleasure, Benedict.
We already have a quick question about the workshop. How much one-on-one time would one expect from participating in a workshop?
I guess the previous one, we really amped it up with the personal time, because every homework assignment that you turn in, we give a pretty personal, in-depth critique and paint over of each person. So I would say we spend at least a half hour to an hour per week on just the homework assignment. And that's not including, like, if you guys have messages, like for those 5 weeks, we're pretty much there for you. So if you have a question on the homework and you're like, I'm getting stuck at this part, what do I do next? You can definitely send it in, and then we will do our best to send it back to you within 24 hours usually. So I guess it kind of varies on how much you're willing to put into the workshop. But the more you're willing to put in, the more that we're willing to help you out on our end. So that's how we usually go for that.
More hellos. So hello from Wisconsin. This is my first time catching this live stream from Lindsay Caleb.
Welcome.
Hi from Washington. in Seattle, in Phoenix, Arizona, Germany.
We are good.
Yeah, Spain, and Italy. We actually have somebody from Italy today.
Wonderful. All right, I'm just gonna switch I'm gonna switch over to my monitor here. And actually, I'm gonna share my entire desktop, so please forgive how crazy the background's gonna be. I'll try to make it as nicely laid out as possible. All right, so today we're gonna be working on the rows. And even though this is working on a specific subject matter, I want you guys to know that this applies to anything that you're working on. So when we're working on, and this is the exercise 40 if you guys don't know what exactly this is. So on the right or on the left here, I'm working on the flower step-by-step, and this will be out on Friday. So you can check that out if you want to see the finished result of each flower. But I specifically left the rows blank because I knew I was going to work on it during this live stream. I'm going to kind of show you how I treat Lineart, and hopefully this gives you some insight on how you could go about treating it yourself. Okay, so I'm going to have my reference over here. How weird does that look? Okay, that doesn't look bad. All right, so let me go back to the layer that I need to be on. Okay, so the Lineart is this one right here. Let me make new layer. Okay, so this is the Lineart that I had originally, and pretty much it's a direct copy of the reference that I took of the rows a few weeks back. Now, when I'm working on the Lineart, I'm not trying to work too specific on like details or shading or trying to get shadows. I'm literally just looking at the outline of each shape. So in this case, flowers can be really tricky, and actually this is proven to be more of a difficult exercise than I originally thought, just because rather than being impressionistic about the flowers, I'm going for realistic. And with that, it means a lot of petal detail. So I really have to go in and individualize each petal, and it's taking a lot longer than I wanted it to, but it's a good challenge on patience, I guess. And for this rose, it kind of falls under that category as well. So I need to be focusing on each petal, but I don't want you guys to do it from the start. So I don't want you to like color each petal individually. I would rather you create some kind of a foundation like we usually do with these live streams and step-by-steps, because I really do believe it does come from having a strong foundation first. So the first thing I did is I grabbed a color off of the road. So I'm color picking off of the reference picture here. And I chose a color that was a pretty neutral, but more on the bold red side, or not as bold red side. So I could have chose more of like a scarlet, but I went for something a little more subtle. But even this color is still pretty intense. If I look at my color picker, you can see how intense it is. But now if I went for like the edge of the flower, we'll get even a little higher. So I chose something more toward the middle on our value range here. So I laid it out, and I laid it out on the entire flower. And the reason I went outside of the lines for this one specifically, because I don't want you guys focusing on the detail yet. And I feel like sometimes outlining every petal edge is too much too soon. So then in the next step here, you can see what I did with the other flowers, is I looked at the reference image, and I quickly laid out the other colors, and I'm softly, it's not pillow shading, but it's very soft, where I'm separating the shapes through contrast of hue. So when I go back to my rows here, so I can look at my reference. Actually, I'm going to do this on a layer above here. And if you want to, you could even mask out the shape so that you never go outside of the box. But I don't really, or outside of the initial laydown of color. It's not necessary, but you can if you are more particular about staying organized. What are the petals I want to focus on here? Because I think this is only going to be an hour live stream, because Joe and I have to go back to the house after this and start getting organized for Minnesota trip, and then get the workshop all up and running. So I don't want to spend too much time on this, but I do want you guys to feel like you understand what I'm trying to teach here. All right, so what I'm doing here is I'm looking at the reference image, and I'm trying not to work too slow, but I'm trying to quickly lay out where the shadows are being drawn. And in some areas, I could go more intense because it is closer to that dark value, and maybe I'll lay it out on the side here like I did the other ones. What I'm trying to do is I'm looking at the reference. I'm seeing how it starts here and it goes out. But really, for the rose, it's almost like a definitive line of where the petal curves out enough where it catches enough light that you can actually see the color. That's why it's really fun to do roses, but you just got to take your time when you're doing the detailed part. But right here, I need to just focus on filling in those gaps. Okay, and as I think as I'm doing these darker areas, I can answer a few questions. Start us off.
No questions yet.
Oh, okay.
Just
you guys
saying hi.
Well, hello. If you guys have any questions about not only coloring over your line art, but anything digital art related, feel free to ask on this one. Because I'm just going to keep going on the rows here and try my best to explain how important it is to not focus on the details early on. So even right now, I caught myself zooming in physically, not on my canvas itself. I don't know if you guys ever do that, but sometimes I get really close to my monitor and I wonder why I have eye damage.
I have a question from Benedict.
Shoot.
So one thing that always bugged me about the exercise is that the references aren't included. Having a reference without searching extra for it would be a great help. Is it possible to include them from now on, like an additional layer on the file?
Maybe. Usually I do. So for the past 4 exercises that were like these step-by-step, so like the candy, the berries, what was last week? The fruit, I provided reference images. So this was the first one I didn't provide it, and I did that on purpose because I don't want you guys becoming too reliant on using reference. I think it's great, but I think sometimes when you're using a photo, like even this right now isn't very challenging for me because I'm not challenging myself besides the idea of just looking at a picture and copying it. So with this one, I wanted to give you the outlines of each of the flowers and tell you what flower they are and do your own research and then do your own color picking and see what the results turn out to be. Usually though, when we're doing these kind of exercises, I know I've been kind of doing a lot of these specific ones where it's very, here's the subject matter, can you draw it type exercise. But in the future, I'll try to add more variety to it. But just know that yes, I'll usually include reference images. And this was one that I did specifically without.
Ooh, more questions. How often do you go outside to take reference photos for yourself, or do you prefer to find them online?
Usually I prefer to go and find them. Unless if it's like a fan art piece or something, I have to look on the internet, but for like the flowers, anything that is something physical that I can go ahead and find myself, I'll go and get the reference images myself.
So you can take the proper angle.
That too. I'm very oddly specific about reference images.
EVE says, I actually like that about the recent exercise. I was a bit more challenging like this, but looking up your own references and trying to work with it helped me get more than just straight up using given references.
Awesome. Yeah, that was kind of the point. So I'm sorry for those that really like using reference. This one was a bit extra challenging than.
I was going to say, it was something about being able to find reference yourself.
Oh yeah, and if you guys have any trouble finding reference, usually you can type, like if I wanted to find a rose, just go to Google and just type rose isolated. And you'll just find roses on a complete white background without any other nonsense surrounding it. So that's usually how I go about finding a reference if I look online.
New question from Ebrara Elliott says, I have a question. Do you plan on making tutorials for other coloring techniques, not just line art? Yeah.
So I started the series, and I know a lot of you have requested for me to finish it. It's just now that we're doing the 5.0 tutorials, I'll probably kind of like re-record them for that series. But pretty much this is one way of doing it. Let me go ahead and make a new layer. So in my opinion, there are 4 ways to go about coloring an image. The first one is doing what we're doing here, which is your line art and then your shading. And oops, of course I'd be under the flower. The second one is organizing chaos. it's so weird writing on a tablet. And that's where one of my friends, Pui, he does this for almost every work he does, when it's where you just start laying out a bunch of different colors, shapes, and values, ranges, tones, whatever. And usually it'll look like a mess at first. It's just a chaotic mess of color and angles. And then it's up to the artist to kind of pull back and try to see the form and shape that are there in front of you. It just needs to be pushed toward the front of all the chaos, and you just have to separate the forms from each other. The third one is grayscale, and that can be done with either line art or just going straight at using laying down values. And then the last one, oh, why am I mind blanking right now? Actually, I can even show you guys rather than try to find it on my own or try to say something that might not be right.
I'm trying to think of, is organizing chaos the same as blocking in?
Maybe that's it. I think it is blocking in. Oh, my internet's gonna be like, no, you're live streaming right now. I'm pretty sure it is. Yeah, you're right. I think it's blocking in. And that's where sometimes I'll do that with my art, but it's rough because sometimes I like at least getting like a quick gestural sketch done first. But pretty much what blocking out is you literally block out the shapes and then you work with them on the go. So you're not like laying out any line art to follow. You're seeing it in your head and then you lay it out as you go. I don't know why I drew a head that was red, but that's kind of the way to go about it. So those are the 4 ways I typically see artists going about drawing, and I will explain those in a tutorial. It probably won't be until the fall though, just because I have to go through a bunch of others before then, but it will definitely be it'll probably be in the blend that will come out around that time.
Sydney Kruger asks, I wonder if you had any tips on giving the impression of translucency. How would you go about painting light coming through the petals, for instance, rather than light bouncing off?
Oh, I really wish. Oh, my internet does work. Okay, because there's an exercise specifically on this. What did I call it? And I know exactly what you're talking about. And with petals and leaves, I actually had an exercise that specifically dealt with leaves of a plant and how the underside of leaves will drastically differ from the top of a leaf based on their color, the value, intensity of the light. Oh man, it's really not going to be happy with me right now. Well, maybe. I believe it was dealing with cast shadows. Actually, I'm almost positive it's cast shadows. My parents still have a landline. Don't ask me why. Oh, why can't I find it? But I'm almost positive it is called cast shadow. You know what? When in doubt, DeviantArt.
I'm trying to think if it was a hand one or if it was you talked about in the candy one.
Candy one, I talk about that too. That's more subsurface scattering.
Yeah.
But it's kind of the same premise though, really. Okay, now I'm like freaking out because I can't remember what I called it. There it is. Oh my gosh. Okay, so yes, cast shadows, exercise 17. And it talks about one of the things that I ask you guys to do is do a plant. And you can see here, like on the top of this leaf, it's a very harsh contrast of like almost pure white and this dark green. And then the underside of the leaves, it's like this yellowy green color because the light is passing through. So we're seeing it much differently than the top of the leaf, which is reflecting the light based on light that is being absorbed by the leaf and us seeing it on the underside. So I think what you're trying to do if you're doing a leaf on the other side, if that was the question, or through the petals. Okay, kind of the same thing. It depends on where the light source is coming from. So if it's coming from behind, you would probably have this kind of effect where it almost appears like it's glowing. It's not glowing though. It's absorbing the light into the leaf and then we're seeing it on the other side. My best advice is, I don't know how well you guys can see the leaf on the left side here, But I would do a mix of where you can see the top of the leaf bending over and then the underside of the leaf. So you get to see both sides of it reflecting and absorbing. So even the leaf here or even this one right here. So that'd be how I would go about that.
I think we need to put out a survey to see where people connect from around the world, like what social network they come from.
Oh, yeah.
Looking for. Jonathan Miller asks, are you looking forward to CG Cookie 5?
Yes. Yeah, I think the whole idea of CG Cookie 5 is a great idea, where it's really focusing and pulling back to what is the essentials of what will make someone a good or a great artist, not just 2D artist. I wouldn't say a digital painter, but they can have the whole spectrum if they want of painting, modeling, sculpting, and then bringing all that together in Unity as a programmer. Or if you really would just want to focus on one, you're really interested in like blending or modeling in Blender, then you can go through the entire course that CG Cookie will have laid out. And by the end of it, you should be like a substantial 3D modeler and feel confident in your understanding of the software and how to go about creating almost anything that you want.
Have you ever drawn animals from the zoo?
Like at the zoo? Actually, yes. I drew an elephant, now that I think about it. I went with one of my good friends back in high school. They won this weird prize where you got to see this elephant that like paints in front of you. So we got brought back behind the elephant stable and we watched this elephant paint on a canvas, and I did a quick sketch of it. It wasn't anything like elaborate, but I do remember drawing the elephant because I thought that was so fascinating.
Are you excited for Lana's new album? That's a question.
Yeah, of course. Honeymoon. I'm not sure when it comes out, but of course I'm excited. And it's kind of funny that she keeps getting brought up in the live stream. But yes, if you guys don't know, I'm a huge Lana Del Rey fan, and I feel like her albums, like, weird. Maybe I'm just looking into it too deeply. I feel like it follows my life a lot, and like her new album's called Honeymoon, and she's in a better place. And I feel like I feel happier. I'm just not as like overwhelmed with things as much anymore. So yeah, I'm excited.
Benedict asks, I'm practicing hair at the moment, but somehow I placed the hairline wrong. Do you have any help on where to put it?
Yes. Okay. So really quick. So when you're drawing your heads and your faces, okay, if you can remember the 3 rule, and I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but it's usually the face will get divided into 3 equal sections. And it starts at the top of the forehead. So when I think about it, I look at the head, and this is your forehead section. This is where your eyes and nose will end up being. And then the last section is your mouth. And usually you go like halfway down for the placement of the mouth. So when you're looking at your head, check where the first 2 segments are, and then go a third up. And it should end up to be where your hairline is. So then I always know my hair will start around this area. Now, mind you, it kind of differs from person to person. Everyone has a slightly different hairline. Some people have a really low hairline. It's closer to their forehead. And some people have a very high hairline, especially if they have receding hairline. Then it's even further back. But usually that's, I would say, the generic, like the go-to, I guess, of where you'd want to go. But the other way I think I would check it is take a step back from your drawing. I've done this a few times or even show it to a friend and just ask if the hairline looks right. Because sometimes you may place it up here. Let's say the eyes are like here or whatever. But you've been working on a piece so long that you don't even realize how high or like how abnormal it might look. So then if you just walk away from it and come back and you're like, oh yeah, that is way too high for what I intended, then you just lower it back down. And this is another thing, comes with practice. The more you do it, the more you'll kind of have your proportions and general guidelines laid out. And I would say that would be the best way to treat it.
And Lily asks, do you usually use Photoshop, or do you have experience with any other program?
I do. I would say almost 95 to 100% of the time nowadays I work in Photoshop. I think just for the convenience, and I feel very comfortable in Photoshop, and I like Photoshops, especially their blending. But yes, I've tried Corel Painter and Mischief. I would say the other two that I really dabbled in, and then GIMP when I first started CG Cookie for a little bit. But I really do believe all digital softwares, painting softwares, are very similar to each other. They might have like one or two like niches that like kind of make them stand out from each other, but for the most part, they do the exact same thing. And it's more of a personal preference. So even though I'm working in Photoshop, if I really wanted to switch to like Corel Painter or GIMP, I could. I just would rather stick with what I'm familiar with. And I don't feel like there's any feature in either of those where I'm like, okay, I really got to move to improve my skill level. Like I don't feel like I'm being held back or hindered because I'm using Photoshop.
I'm always getting hungry from drawing and burn calories like mad. What would you say would be a good snack for long drawing sessions? Or have you never eaten during a long drawing session and always put it off till the end?
I almost always put it off till the end. I would say that's one of my worst habits, actually. Sometimes when you're in the mode and you're just painting, you just forget. And I don't know, maybe that's just me, but usually, yeah, I'll forget. But I guess be a little conscious of when's the last time you ate. And if the question is like more than 6 hours, then yeah, I would go
6.
eat. So like stop what you're doing right then and go eat.
Yeah. What is it? You shouldn't snack on things like at your desk anyway. You should probably I would just set alarms for every like 3 to 4 hours.
Go
eat. You need to eat, especially like when you have no energy and you try to work. That's the worst.
Yeah. Then you feel like you're forcing your work rather than it being like encouraging or awesome.
Yeah.
All right, really quick. So I actually went a little further than I wanted to at stage 1. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring, should I do that in different layers? So now I'm going to bring this over to the next stage. And this is a very important stage because this is where we're going to block out our shapes. And it really, I believe I'll call this step edging, because with something like this where the light source isn't really showcasing the different forms, it's harder to read when you don't have a very clear defined light source. Now for this, it's very flat shaded, and the light source isn't like crazy overhead. It's not dramatic. It's very pillow shaded. So to see the difference in forms, we have to be very attentive to the edges, and that's why the line art is so important. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this layer. I'm going to pull it over here. Okay, so I think I'm going to focus on like the bottom, this area right here, make this look as awesome as I can in the next half hour, and then really explain to you guys why this is important.
Jonathan Miller asks, how long is too long to work on a single piece of art?
I don't think there's a specific time that you can give to that. I would say if you feel like you're over rendering, and that's kind of like at the point where you're not improving the piece, you're just like pushing things around and you're battling yourself on if you even like the direction you took, that's when I think you've spent too long. And I've definitely done that before where I'm like, I just want this piece to be done, but I'm not proud of the outcome. So it's very hard to move on when you feel like you can do better. But it's one of those things where maybe you just put it down, like put it on the back burner, focus on some other pieces for the time being, and then come back to it at a later time. Because you probably will come back with a different insight or a different perspective on how you can treat the painting that will help it in the long run, rather than doing what you might be doing, which trust me, I've done it a lot, where you're just for hours, you literally feel like you've made a lot of progress, and then you like turn the layer on and off when you zoom out and you're like, I can barely even see what I did. And that's when I think you spent too much time on a piece.
Have you ever taken pictures of yourself for reference to have the right pose or proportions? I tend to do this quite often, but know nobody that does this as well.
All right, this is gonna sound a little embarrassing. So I had to open my old computer last weekend, and I went to iPhoto, and I was just perusing through the old photos, and there was an album that had literally like 500 plus pictures of me posing for poses, and I needed like a specific anatomy stuff. So yeah, I was like just in my boxers posing, and honestly, I'm really glad I did that because I could see a lot of the like under anatomy or the undertones of the muscles that I normally wouldn't be able to see in a reference picture when I need like a specific angle. And when I was in school, I always wanted characters, even though they were very much 3/4 pose angles, like I wanted them to be holding something, or they would be usually with like a weapon of some kind, even if it was just a shovel. So there was a lot of pictures of me like holding brooms. And I do think that that does help dramatically. And I think it shows initiative that you're willing to take the extra step to make your character pose, or even if you're not doing like characters, if you're doing anything where you need a specific reference, you took the extra time to go out and get that specific shot. So it will just help you in the long run. So no, I don't feel embarrassed, and just know there are other weirdos out there that do that, and I am one of them.
I wouldn't say it's weird.
It's weird.
I'm pretty sure everybody does that for reference. You know?
No, I'm the only one I know that did that.
I do that all the time. You have to.
Yeah, but you are actually like a personal trainer, so you might just do it because you like, or like, oh yeah.
Because I'm like, oh yeah, oh flex. No, I use them for references and stuff. I have an album too, though, where it's just like me holding a stick.
Yeah.
You know, or like what we did in college was we went out and we had specific days where we'd just be like, let's go out and take pictures in the quad. And so we would just go take superhero pictures and stuff.
I think every artist should do it.
And we weren't in our boxers, but
I was in my boxers.
But
the only slightly embarrassing time is when my roommate came home one time and I like ran to the bathroom.
No, I think it'd be weird if you were doing like non-safe for work poses.
Oh, yeah.
I think that would be a little embarrassing. But other than that, I mean,
I'd probably take it to the next level.
Yeah, if you're doing like action poses and stuff.
Yeah, and I totally think you should. Okay, we should encourage it.
Yeah, no, yeah. It's definitely something that, I mean, they have books on it.
Yeah.
And just
make your own book
on photo harvesting. Have you ever used a mirror though? Like, have you ever tried to draw?
No. Or yes, that was one of our assignments in college. We had to. We were required to.
Yeah.
I kind of like that though.
Michael Fortman asks, what's a good way to keep yourself going to finish a drawing? I find myself spending a lot of time on a single piece when I need to schedule my time to do other things as well. Any recommendations?
Yeah, I definitely think how you spend your time and efficiency is like a key in becoming a good digital artist. But what it sounds like is you might have lost motivation for your piece. And honestly, that's one of the hardest things to do, is finishing a piece that you're not like motivated by anymore. And sometimes you just got to bite the bullet, like put on some music you really like, or I don't know, some show in the background that you can listen to, and just work through it. Just work through it enough where you're like, okay, I'm proud of this piece. I can call it done and move on to the next. Because when you lose motivation on a piece, it really does kill like your drive. And sometimes when you're so motivated to draw something, you work faster. And you might start to notice this as you do your own pieces. But usually when you don't have a motivation behind it, you tend to go slower. You're like more sluggish. So I would say try to move maybe even put it on the back burner for the time being, unless you feel you like have to get it done for a client. If it's like a personal piece, put it on the back burner. If you're not 100% there for your piece, there's no point in trying to fake it.
Or worse, make it so that like you screw it up. Like you can't go back, like if it saves it, you know?
Oh yeah, that too.
Ooh.
Or if you publish something that you're really not proud of, I think that's one of the worst feelings of an artist. But sometimes when you're working with clients, you're on a time schedule and you have to finish it.
How can one apply the rule of thirds? There is a lot of stuff on what is, but barely anything on how to use it right without messing up.
The rule of thirds?
Yeah.
I would say it's a pretty standard composition rule. So if you guys don't know what the rule of thirds is, like no matter the canvas size, so let me do a wide one. So you pretty much split it into 3 sections. Boy. And the rule of thirds states that you should put it in one of these corners, and that's like your area of focus. Generally, that'll work, but you also want to keep in mind, like, what is the flow of your overall piece? And maybe the best thing you can do is have an S-curve. That's usually what I try to do when I'm doing illustration work for compositions. But I mean, when you're doing character concept art, usually they're just standing in a pose, nothing too dynamic. But when you're working with a composition, usually the rule of thirds is more interesting. Now, there are artists that break the rule of thirds and they'll put like their subject matter right in the middle, or they'll go like extremist and they'll have it like very minimal. I guess it kind of depends on the piece that you're working on and really double checking yourself if that works or not. Because you can break the rule of thirds and still have it work, but more often than not, I see the rule being broken and it doesn't work. It actually becomes more of a distraction. So if you're breaking the rule of thirds, make sure that you're doing it for a real reason that actually adds to the composition rather than just being like, I don't like it being in the rule of thirds. Yeah, that too.
Ever asks, if you haven't already, will you make a tutorial concerning the proportions of a face, or maybe just human proportions in general? I think we already have one of those, don't we?
We have a few. I don't know if I have like a full tutorial. I mean, I remember the first tutorials I did for CG Cookie had anatomy stuff on them, but those were 4 years ago, and I probably should update those. And I think there is one on the head, but I really would want to redo those. And yes, so I guess the short answer is yes. I do plan on having tutorials out on that.
Oh, someone's calling me out for not pronouncing someone's name.
Dun, dun, dun.
It says, he's too scared to try to pronounce my name. Dutch isn't easy for English-speaking people. You want to try this name?
All right. Tijl van Weimersch. That's all I got. Probably the worst person to try to pronounce names, though.
Right.
So
No,
I'm
I'm really bad, too.
Okay.
Ooh, Sydney Kruger says, Tim, how do you manage your time in general? I'm currently sacrificing sleep to get things done, and now my work is probably suffering for it. You struggle with this sometimes?
Yes. There are some weeks that are easier than others. This week I specifically made, and actually last week I was like, I just had C2E2 where I was literally staying up to like 3 every night, just trying to get things done. And it does become stressful. And I don't think that actually helps too much when you're overstressing your body. I think you need to find that medium, but sometimes I think it's good. Where sometimes when you're being pushed to get something done in a limited amount of time, you become like a heightened version of yourself, and you gotta get it done. So like there is no, well, if anything, I'll just get it done another day. No, it's like, no, you need to get it done. So your body is like pushing you even faster than you normally work. So I think there is a good to it, but what was the second? So how do I manage my time in general? I would say I usually have like goals that I try to hit, but the one thing is I always try to, whatever I want to draw on that day, I'll draw. So even if I had something else that I wanted to get done, I always trust my intuition. And this is something that Kent taught me, is that when you're really inspired or passionate about doing a specific thing, do it at that moment, because you'll lose interest in it maybe the next day and you won't want to do it anymore. So usually if you can get it done on that day, you'll you'll be inspired to do something again because we're artists and we constantly are generating new thoughts and ideas that we are excited by. So if you put it on the back burner, or if you keep putting stuff on the back burner, you'll just have a collection of stuff that's simmering and you don't have anything that actually gets done. So I guess manage your time wisely and really focus and make what you want to be a priority. So for me, art and I would say family are my priorities. So those will usually come before anything else, and I always make time for them, even when I'm busy. And I know we talked about this on a live stream a while ago, but usually when I hear I don't have enough time for something, it usually means they don't know how to manage their time wisely, or they're using it ineffectively because they're not prioritizing what actually matters or what they want to get done. They just say that they want to get it done, but they don't actually want to do the work that actually goes behind getting stuff done. So I don't think it's too hard to manage your time. Just kind of stay on top of yourself, be like your own boss, and prioritize things when it's important, and make sure that you're setting reasonable goals that are realistic. All right, really quick. So what I did on this layer is I really focused on pushing the colors to the edge of the line art. And this is why line art is so important for something like this. So I'm going to actually go like that. Because in the next step, I'm going to hide the line art layer. So right now, if I hide it, you can see how a lot of the forms and shapes still hold up. We were pushing the colors right up to the line art and not crossing it. So in a weird way, it's kind of like back when you're in kindergarten or whatever you might call it in your country, where you're filling in the shapes up to the line and no more. So color inside of the lines. And then in the next step, which is what I'm going to show you just right in like a minute, we're going to then detail the line, clean it up, and then really make it look nice. So this is how I effectively use line art, where it's more of a guideline. It's literally giving me the path to follow. And then at a certain point, I don't need it anymore. I don't need the map because I can see the end result. I can see the finish line. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of copy this all and move it over.
Megan Mahan is here.
Hey, Megan. Yeah. Oh, no, I remember.
She says, hey there, Tim. Purple hair Megan again. Question for you. Being in the independent game world now, I find myself fighting hard to make sure my pieces are unique down to the detail. How do you make sure not to fall into genericness and keep your art fresh?
You know what? That's a great question. But hold on. Give me 1 second really quick because I need to show you guys a quick trick that I learned. Okay, so if you wanted to, rather than erasing the outside of this flower to the edge, which might take a lot of time, more time than I'm willing to give it, I'm going to go ahead, grab my magic wand tool, which is a selection tool, and I'm going to just grab outside of the flower. So right now it's selecting everything outside of the flower. I'm going to go ahead and turn back on. Let me make sure I get the right layers on this. Is that all of them? Okay. So I'm going to combine those layers down. Then all I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my eraser tool and just erase. And I literally probably just saved myself like 10 to 15 minutes of outlining. But mind you, sometimes it won't always come out clean. So when I hide the line art, you can see how it's rough in a little area or in areas. But if like that bothered me enough, I would just go ahead and grab either the smudge or the blur tool. I think I might use the smudge actually for this. Make it a bit smaller and then just smudge the outline so it's not as pixely looking. And usually that will give me the result I want much faster than if I took my eraser tool. Okay, so then the question about making sure not to fall in genericness and keep your art fresh. This is a really good question because I think I question myself all the time on this. And I really think you have to ask yourself, and it comes down to your intention while you're doing your piece, am I copying someone else's work? Am I literally, like if I was inspired by, like over the weekend, or what was it, yesterday, the Met Gala, that big Chinese fashion show that went on yesterday that was like every celebrity was there. I could be inspired by maybe some of the dresses or some of the fashion that went into it. But then if I just put that on one of my characters, I feel like that's more stealing more than being inspired. So to make sure you're not falling in, and that's not even, I feel, generic. Generic is like when you're doing a fantasy character and making sure, like if you're doing a knight Like, does it look like a generic knight? Or when you're doing a princess, are you doing like a very standard generic looking princess? It depends on how much effort and passion are you putting behind it. And if you really feel like I don't care about what I'm working on, that's the problem right there. Because when you really care about what you're working on, that's when you end up putting your own personalities and your own experiences into the design itself. I know that might sound kind of weird, but that's why the favorite artists that you have are probably your favorite artists, because they're putting their own take, their own style, their own experience into their art. And that's what makes it so great, is because they're really showcasing themselves in a piece of work, which, if we really wanted to get deep into it, isn't that what we are trying to do as artists, is express ourselves through a medium? Now, I don't want to go too artsy fartsy on you, but I will say, to get out of the realm of genericness, if you're given an assignment, let's say you were given a knight and that was your assignment for your game, you could either just go to Google search and be like knight video game, or you could pull your references from more than just that, like expand what you believe a knight can be, and maybe go to like more than just a medieval knight mindset. And it kind of goes back to the whole thing zoo visual library. You got to pull from a larger library than just if you're limiting yourself to very generic things. So my best advice to that is pull from the abnormal and think outside the box. And when you're given an assignment, do more research than you think is needed for each assignment. So even if you were given something that might seem kind of cool and original, do at least a half hour to an hour of just research and finding reference images, because the more time you give in the premeditative state of like, okay, what am I going to draw? Usually the better the outcome will be. So that's my best advice for keeping it fresh.
I was going to say, usually you could just throw in, especially we've had exercises that we've done with each other where it's just like, hey, give me like 5 words and then come up with a concept for it. You know? And it's just like, okay, say we're making that knight. Okay, what's the knight's personality? And then if the knight is like a strong knight, like a big knight, okay, well, what animals represent knight? Okay, or big and strong. So you could do like a bear or an elephant, a rhino, and then you could merge that into the armor design as well. So like, it's about how fast you can come up with quick concepts, but I know the whole, it's like a fear of, is this original, you know? And that's hard to do something that's just pure originality, but it's not impossible.
I think we should also state that sometimes when you're working for a video game company, you might have to produce work that isn't that original.
Oh, yeah.
They probably, this might be hard to hear, but they probably don't that original of work, because sometimes working on the familiarity is what they want. So like if they asked you for a knight and you came back with like, my friend Pui, he does really crazy awesome designs, but it's definitely a more abstract thinking. So if you gave them a more abstract concept and they asked for like, let's say a butterfly, and you gave them like this tornado splurge of like an essence of what a butterfly means to them, they might be like, no, we asked for a butterfly. Yeah. And you just gotta be careful of finding that balance. But when you're doing your own work, oh yeah, I would say absolutely spend enough time and go crazy, have fun with it.
It's like all they wanted was just like a butterfly embroidered onto the armor. Give that guy wins.
Comes back, there's like a landscape.
I was just headed in my head too of something that had to do with this. It'll come back to me. I was talking about like lead characters. I was thinking about lead characters. Like Ash is just your average archer babe, right?
Archer babe?
Yeah, she's just like a blue archer.
Oh, from League of Legends.
Yeah.
I was thinking Pokemon.
Oh,
Ash Ketchum.
No.
I was like, I'm pretty sure.
But you know what I mean? Where like a lot of those concepts are, or like Zack is just a big goo dude.
Well, I used to make fun of League of Legends because like Teemo is essentially a Moogle from Final Fantasy. Like, they're really working on like familiarity of what the player. But yeah, but I would say like sometimes they get away with it where it's like original enough. But like you can definitely tell the difference between like a Jinx and a Teemo, where Teemo is obviously a Moogle, where Jinx you could tell was probably inspired by Harley Quinn. Yeah. But in my opinion, it like took that concept and improved upon it.
Yeah.
Which that I think takes a real like level of skill to be like, I'm going to take a familiar concept and I'm going to make it better. Like that's tough to do.
Yeah. Okay. That was a long rant.
That was a long rant. Sorry, guys.
That's a good one. This is a good question. I've been scared to post my work online because my standards are really high.
Don't.
You just cut it
on,
off
sorry.
there. And I feel that unless I've made my very best, it might be the very worst. How were you when you first began drawing, and should I try to change this?
Okay, that's a really good question. Well, first off, before I even say anything else, post it. I don't care how you feel about it, you need to post it. I was probably one of those, actually, I'm not going to say probably, I was one of those people that I always wanted to be the best. I've always been a very competitive person. And even in grade school, I always was like, I want to be the best artist or like the best drawer. I think I can be the best drawer. And in high school, but it's one of those things where it's like, you know, big fish, small pond. But at the time, even when I was in like 6th or 7th grade, I really thought I was like the bee's knees. And I was like, you know what? Yeah, I'm going to show everyone my work. And I was very like open to, if anyone wanted to see my work, I would just always share it. And when I got to high school, I would always just post it. It would never be like a second thought to me. It wasn't until college where I talked to people and they would be like, you know, I'm nervous about posting my stuff. And it was like, to me, I was like, why? Like, why would you not want to share with the world what you're able to create? And now I think, now that I'm older and I can actually think a lot more logically and put myself in other people's shoes, I can definitely understand the worry of like, I don't think this is my best, that I'm capable of this moment. And then my question to you would be, then why is the piece finished? Like, why would you call it done? If you really think you can improve upon it, I would take the extra time to improve upon it. Or if you really just don't like the concept or the overall composition, whatever, then I would post it, but then work on a new piece. And I think sometimes we get so caught up in like one individual piece representing us as an artist, and you can't have that. You need to, and trust me, like a year from now, you'll really like to see the growth and progress you made. And other people, now it's not everyone, but a lot of people like seeing the growth and progress of an artist in the years that they post. So if you hold back all of the art that you don't feel or you don't label worthy of you as an artist, I think you're also holding back from the people that follow you and really get to see your growth. Because I honestly find that really exciting to see when someone I feel posted something a year ago and then their work today is like so much better. So I guess my best advice would be always post it, but always give it your best on every piece you do. So I don't want you to feel like you can just, you know, do something that you're half passionate about and you don't really care about, and then you post it. I want you to feel like if you really felt like you loved what you were working on, then I don't think there should be any shame in posting at all. I think you should be very proud of what you're posting. Even if you don't feel like it displays your best quality of work, just post it if you're proud of it.
But I think people need to keep in mind that it's not a personal attack when being critiqued.
Oh,
that's because a lot of people, when you put your heart and soul into something, and then somebody comes back with this sucks, or like this is bad, or even like how to improve upon it, people take that very personally. And the trick is not to. The trick is to take what they said and use it to help yourself. You know?
Mm-hmm. Were you the one that said bite your tongue before?
Mm-hmm.
Like when you're getting critiqued, just hold your tongue.
Oh yeah.
Don't get defensive.
Yeah, just get it. No, I said get a piece of paper and write down what they're saying.
Yes.
Because what you're doing is you're paying attention to what you're writing, and then later on you can read it, and it's not as hurtful because you wrote it down. I know that sounds like what, but it
totally makes
helps a lot. Yeah, don't be scared. There's no reason to be scared, you know?
Yeah, I know that it's like a fear of someone taking it, but that's another thing where it's like, no, don't worry about it. Like if you're, actually, I don't even want to go into that whole.
What's the weirdest surface you've ever drawn on? Weirdest material you used to draw? For example, have you ever body painted somebody?
I've been in a paint fight before. What the weirdest material you used to draw?
I think chocolate syrup was mine.
Yeah, I did chocolate syrup too.
Because in college we had to use just a random material. I used mustard and chocolate syrup.
Oh, weird. Yeah, I'm trying to think. Oh, mud's not that weird, I guess.
I was gonna say, they make sculptures out of it, right?
Yeah. But usually it's me like with group of friends slinging mud at each other or the paint, whatever it might be.
I guess that's art.
Right. Everything and nothing is art. All right, so really quick, back to the rose. I'm just gonna give it some edging here. You can see on the reference image, there's like just a hint of like a highlight of this lighter pink color. I'm gonna use that to edge this rose off, and it'll really separate the two forms from each other. So even though I already have the forms pretty much separated, just adding this little edging will separate it that much further. And it's one of those little details that often goes unnoticed, but it really does help the overall appearance of realism.
Oh, we have a couple really good questions lined up.
It's here.
Liv says, what's a good way to start art studies? I've been drawing for a few years now, but I think what I'm doing is dull and boring, but I'm afraid of moving out of my comfort zone. What do I do?
So I guess me and Joel will both answer this because I think we had two different perspectives on this, because I never really did studies. I never like sat down. Like I used to do some anatomy stuff, but I never did like value or composition stuff. Now that might be why my perspectives and environments aren't that great, but I always wanted to do what I was very interested in. So like if I wanted to draw a character, I would draw that character and I would give it 110%. And if there was something I didn't know, like if the character was holding a gun, I would look up references. I would teach myself how to draw the gun, and I would draw the gun. And I think sometimes it's easier to learn new things when you're excited about it. So maybe what you're working on, if it really isn't exciting to you, find something that is exciting for you. Do you like drawing animals or creatures? Go ahead and draw some creatures. Don't feel like you have to constrain yourself to only drawing spheres and the fundamentals all the time, because those are great. But sometimes when you lose your passion for it, sometimes that actually will like hurt you, because then you're not really mentally teaching yourself at that point. It's more of like a painful struggle just to get it done. Where when you're doing studies, you want to really feel like you're learning and you're mentally cognizant of what you're doing, and hopefully that's sticking with you. Because that's how I believe studies are done best, when you're not just like rushing through it to get it done. You're like analyzing and paying attention to what you're doing, so that you don't have to do these studies really anymore. Like they can always help, but the whole point of doing studies is that you can use them in your own pieces. Like the fundamentals behind the studies will be translated into your work.
I guess, like, as far as studies go, like I love studies. Studies are something that I really love doing, but that's not to say that that's the right way of going about doing something. There really, especially in the art world, there's no right way of doing it. I would say that if you're afraid of doing art, then you got to get in the mindset of like fear should not be piloting your art creativeness and where you're going with your art. If you're afraid and you're doing art, then those things aren't going to work out. I suggest if you feel like moving out of your comfort zone, do it. You know, have fun. Stop. Don't just go, oh, I'm scared of what could possibly happen. You know.
Oh yeah, yeah. If you're afraid of moving out of your comfort zone, it's actually, I feel like you learn more when you're outside of your comfort zone.
Yeah, because you don't have anything to be like.
Yeah.
I understand the idea of fear in the sense of like, is this the right direction?
That makes more sense. Yeah.
And with that, I would say the right direction is how you determine it. And if you feel like it's like you could take something from what you've learned in that different zone. So say if you've never drawn buildings before, you want to try it, you'll probably learn a thing or two about perspective that'll help with character design. The biggest thing is making sure that you're when you're doing other things, that you're picking up something and learning from it, and not just being like not on autopilot.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
I guess really quick with that one too, I think like if you gave me a concept of doing like a poor boy fantasy, like, yeah, I feel like I could rely on my comfort zones. But would I really learn much? Probably not, because I feel I can rely on what I already know about that subject matter and genre that I could just pull from it and go for it. Now, when I first got my job at CG Cookie, the first big project they had me do was a creature. And I've never really drawn a creature before, ever. And it was a struggle. It was a very back and forth. And Wes and Jonathan were like awesome with helping me they were never like just like, oh, that looks really good, Tim. They were always like, no, like this looks wrong. The anatomy it would never work like that. If the creature was in this environment, why would they have this kind of leg set? And they made me question how I saw not only creatures, but then my art in general. And that's when I really felt I learned a lot. So that piece still holds a lot to me because I was outside my comfort zone, and I feel like I learned so much because of it. So yes, you're supposed to be afraid of you're not being in your comfort zone, but that's the point. All right, let me zoom out from this flower, see what we got here. All right, so you can see the general direction I'm going for the rose right here, and I would probably finish the other half if we had time. I know we're already hitting our hour mark, so maybe let's do like 5 more really good questions, and I'll just keep kind of working on the flower as I'm answering these.
All right. Sorry, it's just D-Broad says Weirdo took foot pics this morning for reference.
I'm telling you, it's very normal, in my opinion. It just seems weird to other people. I guess that's the best way to explain it. Like if my mom walked in and I was like taking reference pictures of myself in my boxers with a broom, yeah, that looks weird. But I know why I'm doing it, and I feel like I have a good reason why I'm doing it.
If anything, be like, hey, Mom, come hold this for a second.
I really wanted to clean it. It was warm.
We don't own a chimney. Says, I'd like to see your growth and progress as an artist, to be honest. Show us the stuff from school someday. Mark out your journey. Guess which is your favorite Final Fantasy? Squints and Judging You.
Yeah, you know what? I have absolutely no shame in saying 10 is by far my favorite Final Fantasy. I love everything about it, from the undertones that as a kid, I think I knew that they were there, but I didn't understand it. But the whole idea of like, I mean, religion is a big thing, but then how you see your parents and death, like there were so many things that kind of went over my head as a kid, but I loved it. Like I was definitely one of those kids that, I cried at the ending, but now that I'm older and I replay it, I can appreciate the storytelling that was there, and I'm starting to understand more of what they were trying to tell. And I think that's when a story is really great, because the bad guy in that story wasn't a bad guy. And I think it was David Fincher that said the best stories or the best conflicts happens when both people are right. It's just they're fighting for their opinion. And it's one of those things where I think that story, told it really well. Now, I'm not saying that the other ones I didn't like as much. I thought 7 was really fun. I thought 12, I didn't give enough credit when I first played it because I was so like, it has to be better than 10. And it, in my opinion, it wasn't, just because the story was kind of weak, but the battle system was great and the aesthetic, and Rabanastre was just such a great environment that it did feel alive. But, I could talk about Final Fantasy forever. You know what? I might actually have my art in my parents' closet right here. Hold on. All right. So I'll also show my digital art transition, but really quick, I'll show you what I thought was good in high school. Let me go ahead.
Oh God, it's the infinity.
Right, the infinity. All right. Let me see if I can pull out a few pieces here. Because it's like I said earlier, you should have no shame in being able to say, like, this is where I was at one point. And I'm proud of the fact that I feel like I've grown since then.
It's always funny though, finding those sketchbooks.
Oh, it's so
like from high school or before, like middle school, and you're like, I really like Dragon Ball Z.
Right? Oh boy, man. There's some funny ones in here. All right, I won't grab too many. Man, I haven't seen a lot of these in a long time. All right. And then let me grab a few high school ones I have here.
Did you ever play 14?
No, I tried 11, but I'm just not a big MMO person.
Oh, that's right.
But I know a lot of people really, really like 14. Well, and 11. I feel like 11 has such a big fan following.
Yeah, it really did. That's why 14, like when it first launched, it even had loyal people, even though the game was terrible. But that relaunch, when they did Realm Reborn, was so like good and beautiful. Man, that's probably my favorite. Just from the concept art alone makes that my favorite.
Okay, I think I'm ready. Okay. Alright, so I guess first I'll show some early high school ones. And this is actually a really fun one for me right now. Alright, so really quick. Oh, this is kind of crazy. Alright, so I was really into Japanese culture back when I was in high school. So this was like, I think, freshman. I was like, I'm going to showcase my love of not only the Japanese culture, but I really love flowing fabric. And that was like...
You went by Timmy Von?
I went by Timmy Von back in the day. Yeah. And that was one of them. And then this is the same art teacher that I got into a really big argument with. And at one point, she insulted me and like emailed my parents saying I wasn't an artist. So I did this very angry piece. And I remember she came up to me when I was drawing it and she was like, "Now that's what I'm talking about." And I'm like, "What? Like, this is like the worst thing I've ever done. And this is what you're going to like start appreciating." But I understood it was because I wasn't looking at anything. It was just me drawing based on what I liked. Okay. I only will show 2 more from high school. Oh, you know what? Here's my Final Fantasy X one. Okay. So I was really big into, I don't know how well they can hear me, into paint splashing. So this is one of mine. And once I did a few of them, it became like my senior thing. So I have like 15 or 16 of these in the back. Oops. There's another one. So I really liked the idea of the colors telling the story of the emotion that was going on in the character. And then this was another dumb one. This is a freshman one. You can obviously see I'm still obsessed with flowing fabric, and the Gorillaz music video I thought was awesome. The floating island. And then really quick, I guess, some of my college stuff. This is so crazy. I didn't expect you doing this in live stream. So I think it is important to do anatomy studies. And then I don't know if you can see this, but we had to first draw the guy.
Oh, that's awesome.
And then we had to like lay a tracing paper and then figure out what the bones and the skeletons would look like.
It's a really good idea.
In it. And yeah, that I really liked. I really think the life drawing class was like the best thing for me. And there was another one with a life drawing model that actually wore clothes. I was really upset. I was like, why are you even a model if you're going to be a life drawing model? It's like, isn't that the point? And then here's a color study. I remember we had to like look at the original image and then just use colored pencils to try to recreate it. This is when I was upset. Actually, I'm still obsessed with this pattern, which I just found out. It's called filigree, and all the feather nonsense that I draw nowadays. Ooh, all right. Sorry about that little segue. I just realized that I had all my art in the corner. But then for the 2D transition, I can show that maybe next live stream. But I definitely have, because since I redraw my characters over and over, I have a pretty good comparison from like when I first was learning digital art to like 2 years ago and last year. And it really does show the progression I made over the years. Whew. I'm almost out of breath.
You got really excited.
I was so excited. I know. I was like, oh, I have my art here. Yeah.
Okay. This is an extension to the original question from Everard. It says, I have very rarely finished my pieces. I always reach out around halfway, and then this new thing happens inside my head, and then I go on to something else. Is this inherently bad? How can I strive to finish my stuff?
No, I think that's actually inherently good. I feel bad for the artists that like can't think of new ideas all the time, and sometimes it's frustrating because it's like waiting for inspiration to happen. But what it sounds like is you're over inspired, so you have too many ideas, which is a good thing. And now I guess the work for you would be figuring out, okay, I'm going to work on just this and I'm going to finish it before I move on to the next thing. Because then otherwise you're moving too fast from idea to idea and you're not actually like letting any resonate with you and like sit down and actually finish an entire piece based on that idea.
Actually, when I was taking the class with Anthony Jones, he yelled at me about this because that's how I usually work too. And he said, it's kind of like running a mile and not finishing the mile. And you can't ever, if you don't finish pieces, then you'll never know what it's like to finish a piece. So just finish a piece. Just work from beginning, and then even if you feel like you're going to move on to the next thing, finish the piece.
Yeah.
Fight your way to the end, finish the piece, because you don't want to be someone who doesn't finish their work. You know?
What's one of our friend Gabe's, his biggest advice is, well, I know it's probably not his quote, but done is better than perfect. And that's so true for us as digital artists because we get so hung up on like wanting it to look perfect and up to a standard that sometimes is impossible to reach. And I think it is good to note, you know, okay, I'm ready to move on to the next piece. I'm proud of this piece. I can post it. And if there's things I think I can do better, let me show you in the next piece that I'm going to do.
Yeah, that was something that I learned with that suit, was just like not like wanting everything to be absolutely perfect and then just stressing out over it and then being like,
oh yeah,
you know what? Sometimes things aren't perfect.
Right.
Benedict asks, can you ever give a tutorial on how to get into Japanese ancient art?
Probably not in anything recent just because I have to focus on 5.0 and a lot of those are more fundamental tutorials where that is a very specific tutorial.
Yeah.
I definitely think it would be fun maybe to do for a live stream and give my best go at it. I really like, I don't know if you guys, well, I'm trying to think if I can get something done in a live stream. I would probably have to come in with something that is like 50% done and then work on it for like an hour or hour and a half and then finish it on my own time. I would just probably go through like the techniques and standards and the ideas that go behind that specific genre of art. And then
I just got really excited because I was like, we should do a traditional Sumi ink painting live stream. That would be awesome.
Well, if you want to do that, yeah.
I love ink and brush.
I don't trust myself with ink and brush. It'll end up on me. Let's get two more good ones.
What's a good free program to use?
You know, I haven't found one that I'm like 100% behind yet. GIMP comes close, but I think there's a lot of, I remember I had a lot of user interface problems with GIMP. And the multi-window thing bothered me. I know that I think they snapped it together now. But I would say that I still GIMP comes to the blending or provides the amount of blending that I like that Photoshop has, or it's a much smoother transition. Now, mind you, I haven't tried it in a few years, so I probably should get back and give it another try before I judge it. But I would still say Photoshop and Corel Painter and like the ones that you do have to pay for, I still feel give more to offer than the free softwares.
Okay, do you want a serious or a fun question for the last one?
Let's do fun.
What is your favorite fantasy weapon?
Shovel. I think it's like the greatest weapon ever, but no one ever seems to agree with me.
Out of all the fantasy weapons, you're going to go with the shovel?
Yeah, because it's like, 1, you don't expect it to be a weapon. 2, it has reach. 3, it's a blunt object that won't break on you. And if you have like that paranoia of questioning your morality, if you're killing people constantly, this will just knock them out.
But like a fantasy weapon though, like, you know, like Titus's blade is like a water blade thing, like his sword.
Oh, okay.
Or like an ultimate weapon.
Yeah, you know what?
you're just like shovel.
I think I might have to go more boring on this, just because I've never been like. I know some people really like the idea of like leveling up your items and like having the best flaming whatever it might be. But I always like just simple blunt objects. I always thought those were like the coolest weapons, and maybe not a shovel. It would probably be like kind of what my character Red has, where it's a box that she can either swing or pull other weapons out of. But I like the idea of just a blunt weapon. I think that's my favorite type of weapon.
You can make either different versions of shovels though.
Like what would I do? Like I wouldn't want it.
It just didn't have a cooler design, I guess.
What's cooler than like ordinary shovel?
A shovel with if the handle was like embroidered and stuff.
Oh, see, I wouldn't like that.
But like, imagine a fighting style all based on so like, if you like shove it in the ground, you could like use it to like pop off of, like you jump off of the shovel, like it launches you. Sorry, I'm like going like crazy fantasy, and Tim's giving me this look of like, no, it's just a shovel.
I guess like who was it? Ivy from Soul Calibur. I like the whip sword. Like
That's pretty cool.
I would say if I thought something was cool, I'm saying that in air quotes, cool. That would be pretty cool.
Or like any of the guns from Ruby, or like the weapons from Ruby, like the sniper rifle scythe.
A scythe is always cool.
That's like,
I don't think you can go wrong with a scythe.
I think any type of katana would probably be my favorite.
Yeah, Kill Bill.
As long as it can cut through anything.
Should I do my quick scroll through?
Yeah.
Oh man, the first one I saw was some people do amazing work with a mouse. Yes, you can do your work with your mouse, but trust me, just buy a tablet. It'll make your life so much easier.
That was a question like at the beginning. I think someone asked about the difference of doing like what's faster or which. Where is that question? It's like at the bottom.
Yeah, that's rough. Oh, the brush I was using was a skin brush. So if you want to, you can actually download this on CG Cookie. So for the entire rose and all the other flowers that I'm doing right now, I don't know how far I am on some of these. I'm using almost specifically just the skin brush, just at different sizes, except for when I started, I was using a soft edge brush. And that was so that I wasn't focusing on the detail. And sometimes with a soft edge brush, it almost forces you not to focus on detail.
Well, the question is, how efficient can you be with drawing only using a mouse, not the graphical tablet?
Much more efficient with a tablet. Okay. I think we're done. Okay. Thank you guys for coming to this live stream. Next week, I'll do something a little more interesting. This was kind of a last minute. It'll probably be the traditional tutorial, and I know I posted it on the wrong link as well. It's been a crazy week, but I really want to thank you guys for coming to this live stream. And if you are interested in the workshop, we are going to post it in about 40 minutes for you to sign up and register for it. And once again, that's the personal one-on-one mentorship where me and Joel will be running it, and we'll be working with you and 14 other students on a very individual basis and take in regard of whatever skill level you're at and trying to take a few steps up the stairs of, I guess, your skill level. So stay tuned for that. And once again, if you guys are in Minnesota and we'll be at Anna Minneapolis, me and Joe and a few of our friends will be there, and we will definitely be more than welcoming if you stop by the booth and say hi. Okay. So
before we get we end the stream, sorry. It says, hi guys, thank you. I worked really hard learning how to draw better to get my dream job, and I did it. I was hired as a 2D artist, and your streams, lessons, tips helped me a lot. I just wanted to share it. Special thanks to Tim's motivational speech. Yeah, you can't see it. I think that's Russian. I think that's Yazya.
Thank you so much. That's really nice.
That's awesome.
My motivational speech.
I think you gave one a couple weeks ago on staying motivated.
I'm trying to remember. Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah, that stuff like that does really mean a lot. And that's kind of why I do these conventions, because usually I'm just talking to my computer, and it's actually good to know that there's people that are actually being affected by what I'm saying or what I'm drawing. So thank you so much for that. All right. Are we good?
Yeah, we're good.
All right. Take care, everyone, and hopefully we'll see you next week with our traditional live stream. So stay tuned for that. All right. Bye, guys.